Hello everyone and welcome into another video. Today I'm going to be talking about another survival hunter tip or series of tips. This dungeon that I'm going to be focusing on is NECROTIC Wake. So I'm going to be talking you through everything from a hunter perspective, specifically I guess beast mastery or survival hunter having access to the pet. Everything that you can focus on doing to help your team in this dungeon to ensure success and to assist along the way. So there's not too much in this dungeon really to cover. There's only a couple real strong things, mainly in the necrotic area, or the necropolis, sorry. So basically there are these stitchwork mobs, and they have two mechanics that they do in general. One is tenderize, which we just saw, which puts a debuff on the tank, which is going to result in them taking more damage. The second is mutilate. Mutilate is a hard-hitting ability that is going to be compounded on the fact that your tank has that tenderize on them as well. So then you have this specific gore grind mob, which also does a gut slice, which is a frontal, and it will target a specific player at random, and then it will aim it in their direction, even if they're ranged. So melee, you just have to always be on your guard. This mob, very specifically, we're looking to taunt, and it can realistically be either the tenderize or the mutilate, but I would say the best one to taunt is the tenderize, because then the mutilate does way less damage if the tank doesn't have tenderize stacks. And you can pet taunt at around about like anywhere between 2 to 4 stacks, depending on the level of key and whether it's fortified or not and stuff like that. But I try and always aim to get like that 3rd or 4th tenderize. I try and take that one on my pet. All you need to do is time your pet taunt before the tenderize ability starts to get cast. And the way that I kind of track it in my head is I wait until, for a lot of stuff, I just track it in my head based on feeling, and just like, there's an internal thing in my head going like, oh, it's been a while since that boss cast that thing, or that mob cast that thing, it's going to cast it again. But with this, luckily with tenderize, you can actually see once the plate starts to get down to that last, like, I guess that last 1/3, that's when he's going to look to cast it again. So within in about, and I mean, I've paused this video and everything, he's going to cast it in about a second. So about 1, 2, now. So that's 2 stacks. So that's where you could look to pet taunt. And I'll kind of let it play through a little bit. Interesting thing with Gore Grind is that he does, on his 3rd gut slice, the one after, he immediately, so he's done 3 tenderizes. The one after that, he immediately, like, he's going to do gut slice now. He's going to immediately do tenderize. So whilst he's casting this, right at the end, you can pre-pet taunt, and he's going to immediately tenderize. And you can watch this. There's a gut slice. Bam. Immediately he's going to tenderize. It's like he does 3, then the 4th one is the one that you can pre-taunt during the gut slice. So this is a really nice way, and look, you can see that I was able to reset my tank stack, so he was at 3 stacks. Gore Grind does the gut slice, and you can do these on all the Stitch Flesh mobs, and then bam, there's the tenderize. So then now my tank is able to reset his stacks. He doesn't have to kite out. He's not taking excessive damage. He's not going 100 to 0, that kind of thing, or 100 to 10% and stuff like that. So really helps out. Some tanks don't need it, like Eltharion didn't really need it, but I did it anyway, because it's good practice, and may as well. Like, it doesn't really cost me a whole lot. You can even save your pet from dying if you're really good as well, and use things like exhilaration, because you don't really need it in this stage anyway. But I wanted to take some time to explain this, because I think it's quite critical to get this correctly, and when you're pet taunting, and why, and how to do it exactly. But yeah, that's the pet taunt. You can do it in quite a few dungeons. You can do it in Zav Wing of Theatre of Pain for the, I can't remember what the name of the ability is, but there's like a few tank front abilities and stuff like that, tank crushes. So this clip, I don't actually have a good video example, so I'm going to show you here in person. But it's showing you a way of using your Frost Trap in ways to bypass mobs and get past trash without pulling them and engaging in combat. So I'm going to show you the trick, because a lot of hunters actually get this really wrong. So this comes down to, you can skip trash in a pack, for example, with Rogue Sap or with Demon Hunter Cage, Mind Soothe, that kind of stuff, right? But things with Sap and Cage is that they are like true CCs, right? So they don't put you in combat. However, if I freezing trap this mob and then I run near it, it will put me in combat. And then anyone else that runs near it, it'll put them in combat. And then if that trap then breaks, this mob will then run over to us and start attacking us because we were in combat with it. So it's not like a true CC. But you can bypass this with a very specific way. And what you want to do, and the reason we want to do it in NECROTIC WAKE, by the way, is so that we can grab this hammer as it's an additional weapon to use later on in the dungeon. But what you can do, and you have to be very specific with this, dismiss your pet, that's the first thing. Trap the mob. Then you as the hunter, first one to get in combat. You can see right here, I've just gotten in combat with it now. The mob's just turned red, it has aggro on me. If this trap breaks, this mob will run after me. However, if you have your group, say for example, you group whatever, somebody else needs to come do this, they come and pick this up, as long as you trapped it, you got in combat first, they then run, grab the hammer, jump out, and they're far enough away from the mob, and then you feign death, you will drop combat, this trap will break, like I can retrap something else, this trap will break, I'm not in combat with this mob now, and neither is anyone else in the group. That's the key here, is that as long as you have your pet dismissed, so your pet doesn't get in combat, you're the first person to become in combat with the mob that's trapped, and then everyone else kind of runs past you. Even if they get in combat, as long as you don't pull a new set of combat mobs, and then you feign death, then you're safe. So you need to make sure that like your tank doesn't run on ahead, run through, pull a bunch of mobs, and then you feign death, because then you'll still be in combat, because you didn't break combat at any point. So you need to have a hard combat break. But that's how you do kind of the frost trap move past. Okay, so the next one I wanted to talk about is actually on the boss, the third boss, Surgeon Stitchflesh. This is quite an interesting pet taunt that you can do. So these Stitchflesh creations, sometimes you have more of them than you need. You only obviously need one. Sometimes if things don't go to plan, or if you're in this kind of situation, you might have two. And the hooks that these creations do can end up getting whiffed, or they end up hitting each other because they're stacked on top of each other because they're both on the tank, blah, 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 and it can be quite awkward. If you're trying to then hook Stitchflesh back down from the platform, what you can actually do is you can pet taunt one of these with your pet, and then if you look down here, there is a pet move command at the bottom kind of left of the screen there. There's a pet move command, so you can actually taunt the mob and then command your pet to move to a location that's away from this other mob. Say I normally do it like 30 yards out, so my pet has time to kind of run. The mob is going to move fully out, and it's not going to kill my pet. And so I kind of just move it like 30 yards out. What this does is it separates out the two creations and allows you to have two clear hooks. So it can help ensure a better success of the key of the creations actually hitting with their hooks. I didn't unfortunately have a clip of doing this, but you can kind of use your imagination and understand how exactly you're doing it. And all you need to do is time it before the meat hooks come in. This example, we have like 4 seconds left or whatever before it's going to come in. We end up killing the boss, which is fine. So it was no big deal. But if the boss has been at high level health, then that's something that you can look to do. All right, so that's really everything in NECROTIC WAKE. There's not really tons of like hunter specific stuff in this dungeon, really. A lot of it is the pet taunt swaps that I think are vital and can be really, really helpful in your keys. And I get a lot of tanks. I play with some, played with some high-end tanks who have said, I've never had a hunter do this before. Can you do this for every single one? For the tenderizers and stuff like that in the Necropolis wing, and especially on high level fortified, it can be really helpful when it's necrotic as well. You got necrotic stacks stacking up on your tank, or bolstering, or anything like that. Raging, I mean, you can soothe it, sure, but it really helps your tank if you can do this. And a lot of them will notice and then go, oh my god, wow, that hunter was really good. Okay, I want to invite them back. But anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next week for the next one.